Hello and welcome back to our 6-week Skillful Living program. My name is Venerable Tarpa. This is our second week and third class of our program. This week, we're going to be exploring happiness. Boy, you don't get any better than that. But first, like always, let's briefly review what we learned in last week's class. Last week was wonderful as well. We learned all about virtue and then cultivated it together throughout the week with the reciting of our daily affirmations, our reflecting on and cultivating the 10 virtuous acts, and engaging in the SBT practice of the 4 gifts, one of my very, very favorites. I'm practicing it right now. I always practice it when I teach. Hey, does anybody have any questions about last week's practice? How was your first week of practicing skillful living? Welcome, Sheila. Was it awesome? And how about your level of virtue? Are you all feeling more virtuous? Did it work? You practiced. I want to see everybody nodding their heads. You practiced a whole week. I'd hope that you'd be more virtuous. Yeah. Great. Hey, how about the morning affirmations? Did everybody find them and download them okay? Did you practice them? Were any of them what's the word I'm trying to find? Did you not care for any of them? Were they all okay? Were you able to practice them throughout the week? So we recommended novice level to everybody, and that's a grand total of about 3 or 4 minutes, right? They're pretty short. So I don't think we're asking much of everybody, but they really do work. You got to give them some time. And lastly, how about the 4 gifts? What did you guys think of the practice? Were you able to layer those 4 gifts? Remember our happiness, our care, our calmness, our care, and our, oh, I'm sorry, I had it backwards. Stable, calm, caring, and happy. Miss Wamo?
No, I love it's my favorite practice. It's my favorite meditation. And it's really helpful even when you first get up in the morning to just say those 4 words and take a minute when you start your day. So yeah, I think it's a great practice.
It's even a great practice when you're alone, isn't it? It's just great. David, please.
I've never liked the four, and I've never really got the four, four gifts before, but I loved it this time. I absolutely loved it. It's my favorite meditation, suddenly from just being something I couldn't be bothered with.
Outstanding. Thank you. Miss Jen?
I liked using the 4 gifts with a walking meditation, 1 step stability, calmness. Um, what was that? I've lost him. Anyway, one with each step.
Oh, that's cool. That's a really cool thing. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad everybody liked it. Do you all think you've created a base of virtue that now we can move on and add to it? Well, you all look a lot more virtuous to me. You're all looking, I see little halos around everybody. Oh, wonderful. Okay, everybody. Hey, let's get to it then. So this week we're going to explore and cultivate happiness. So generally, we define happiness as an optimal state of well-being. Oftentimes people have trouble defining it, but I think that's a great definition, an optimal state of well-being. In its Buddhist context, happiness is related to uh, closely related to satisfaction, and in the context of the satisfaction of attaining what we want while being free of what we don't want. Isn't that equally a fascinating expression, huh? That happiness is getting what we want and not getting what we don't want. It's true. In Buddhism, happiness is also understood not as a single static emotion, but instead as a spectrum of experience with common happiness, like having your favorite radio, your favorite song pop up on the radio at one end, and ultimate happiness, which in Buddhism is nirvana, awakening, and enlightenment itself at the other end. According to the Dalai Lama, I first read this in his book, The Art of Happiness, when I was just a wee lad. Um, the Dalai Lama claims the purpose of life is to be happy. Now, I remember when I read that it seemed to me an overly simplified claim, right? Is that really the purpose of life? I mean, there's so much going on. Is that really it? And I pondered it for many years, but then one day it occurred to me uh, the truth of this, and all of a sudden the brilliance of it became really clear because I realized that say you'd ask people what their aim in life is, right? Generally, you'd get answers like I want to be rich or famous or maybe influential or important, or maybe many people just want to simply be loved, secure, and content, right? But regardless of the answers, if you take the time and ask a follow-up question and you ask, why do you want those things? The deeper truth comes out. For most people will answer the second question as because I think it'll make me happy. Right? So you ask a young person, what do you want to be? Rich and famous. Why? Well, they'll probably ponder a little bit. Well, then I'll be happy. So then you see, oh, the happiness really is the ultimate aim in life. It's just that we tend to align ourselves with these secondary happinesses or these stepping stones, and we identify with those. But so, with that said, what exactly is happiness? And I think that this is a really bizarre phenomena in the world. Um, so when um, when I ask people when I talk about happiness, when I ask people about happiness, when we teach this class, there's always a strange thing that happens, and people will just say, I don't know what that word is. Or you ever meet someone where you say, hey, how are you? Are you happy? And they say, what does that mean? Like, what does that? We're so indifferent to the term. We've heard it so much that I think it almost loses its meaning, right? So again, like last week, we learned philosophical bracketing. So again, if we bring that in and we look at the word fresh, right? Not all our views of what it is or what it's supposed to be. You go on YouTube and there's a million lists of how to be happy and what you need to be happy. But if we really break it down and look at it from fresh eyes, again, the true value starts to come through. You start to see happiness's true nature. Um, and at the deepest level of understanding, a lot like when we bracketed goodness, happiness starts to seem as quite mysterious, doesn't it? Yeah, what exactly is this thing called happiness that we're all drawn to? Again, like moths to a flame, we're drawn to goodness and we're drawn to happiness. Literally everything we do in our lives is to attain this thing called happiness. So, like goodness, happiness possesses that kind of gravity we talked about that draws us to it, right? And when seen from a broader perspective, you can see that happiness represents one end of our spectrum of experience, right? So our spectrum of experience, of human experience, and probably all sentient life, at one end we have happiness, and at the other end we have suffering. all experiences, whether internal, mental, external, they all fit into this spectrum of experience and all kinds of stuff in the middle, right? So, and in fact, this may be the best understanding and definition of happiness, that happiness is simply the opposite of suffering. Now, what's funny, I've mentioned this before. As I said, when we talk about happiness, 1,000 hands will raise. Can you please define that term for us? And what exactly do you mean by happiness? But what's funny, when we talk about its opposite, when I talk about suffering, nobody questions it. Nobody raises their hand. Can you define suffering for me? We're all okay with suffering. We all clearly know what suffering is, but we're at ends with happiness. So think about it like that. Happiness is simply the opposite of suffering. And of course, this ties into the one question that I'm asked more than any other question. How can I attain happiness? How can I be happy? Um, but before I answer that question, let's begin by first agreeing upon exactly what form of happiness are we talking about. I mentioned that in Buddhism, we see happiness not as a static emotion, but as a spectrum of experience, right? So, what is happiness? Are you talking about again the happiness of when your favorite song comes on the radio, or is it the happiness of your firstborn child, witnessing your firstborn child, right? Is it the happiness of somebody handing you a puppy dog or winning $1 million? I mean, all of these happinesses have different intensities, different flavors. They all last different amounts. However, I think the question of attaining happiness, when most people are asking me, it pertains more to, or they're really asking me, how can I achieve stable, lasting happiness? Because they say, how do I attain happiness? I could hand them a puppy dog. I could give them a gift certificate to Pizza Hut. But what we're really talking about is stable, lasting happiness, right? In Buddhism, this is a happiness that's referred to or closely related to contentment, right? So let's take a moment and explore the happiness of contentment. Contentment, commonly defined as satisfaction with one situation in life. Contentment is satisfaction with one situation in life. And it's related to our evaluation of our situation, right? Evaluation, evaluation of our lives in comparison to others. In the text, which I hope everybody studied, I have a funny thing in there that says a millionaire living among millionaires could be very happy, but a millionaire living in a neighborhood of billionaires can be miserable, right? For many of us, our happiness, our contentment is always based on an evaluation and relationship to let alone people around us, but the world around us, right? And we're always evaluating that. And it's to me, it's a kind of dialogue, right? That I say that, well, I'm not the smartest, I'm not the most handsome, I'm not the richest, but I'm doing okay. This is this idea of contentment. This is the idea of evaluation, right? I'm making a little bit more than my neighbor, so I'm happy. I have my car's 1 year newer than my neighbor's. I don't have the latest iPhone, but I'm only one version away from the latest, so I'm happy. So happiness can arise in many different ways. It can arise as a direct experience. A great example is sitting in front of a fire in a cabin on a cold winter snowy day. We all know that feeling. Wrap yourself up in a blanket, you feel so cuddly and content, right? Um, But contentment can also arise conceptually. We can we can we can think thoughts, we can contemplate, we can reflect on memories, uh, and feel content. We can think about the contentment when we were children of our loving families, our parents. Um, Contentment can also uh, be actively generated. And this is something that Buddhists know that a lot of people don't know, that all of our emotions can be generated. And some may say that, well, that doesn't sound like authentic emotion, but you'd be surprised. And oftentimes, by generating emotion like happiness, the real thing is definitely found. So, so contentment, happiness can be actively generated, meaning you can actually choose to be content. You can choose to be happy. How many people had some miserable job? I remember I worked for a trophy and plaque company when I was about 19. My job was a board of little plaques came to me, like 9 across, and I had to nail the little back clip on so you could hang it on a wall. That's all I did all day long, 8 hours a day for as long as I worked there. And it was, you're supposed to do 4 taps and the nails set, and you do the tray and you slide it, and another one comes. So it was miserable and it was boring. But I could always do a trick, and we all know this. I could make up my mind to enjoy myself and just to switch my attitude and enjoy the situation, right? So we all know that it's possible to have control over our minds, emotions, mental attitudes. So unlike other forms of happiness, contentment lies in the middle between mundane happiness, like you got a couple extra French fries in your McDonald's bag, way down at the bottom, right? That's an amazing experience, and elation of winning $1 million. Contentment is a happiness that can be cultivated into a nearly constant state of mind, a truly stable happiness. With practice, contentment can become a constant characteristic of our default mindset. So the default mindset is this resting point where your mind continuously returns to between stimuli. So we're saying that the mind can habituate and naturally sustain this quality of contentment. Having a default mindset of contentment never prevents us from experiencing the more intense kinds of happiness, like elation, nor does it prevent us from experiencing meaningful sadness. Isn't that a strange term? Meaningful sadness, like when experiencing loss or when empathizing with others, right? There's very important times in our lives that we embrace suffering, especially with others. I remember when I first learned about this idea of the Buddhist goal of contentment, I was kind of saddened by it. Uh, I was young and I had the idea that if I chose contentment, that I was giving up other forms of happiness, that I could no longer experience elation. My new goal was nothing but contentment. And I was absolutely wrong. The idea of contentment, again, is just being part of our default mindset. It's what we return to. It's that center point that's balanced, that's stable, but that absolutely doesn't stop you from getting on a roller coaster and having a ball, right? Going to a concert. The happiness of contentment possesses a quality of equanimity and buoyancy. I like that word buoyancy, that adjusts itself to the rise and fall of emotions and experiences, resulting in a more balanced mind that's at ease and harmonious with its environment. To show you what I mean, let's try an experiment. I'd like all of you to sit where you are. How about closing your eyes for me, taking a deep breath or two, and begin to generate a feeling of contentment. We all know what it feels like. You can use some mental stimuli if you want. Think about something that makes you feel content, your favorite sweater, or watching TV with a big blanket around you. Now, while abiding in that state of contentment, I want you to turn your thoughts towards something pleasant, like the smile on a child's face, which should create a greater feeling of happiness. Now, while remaining in that state, I want you to do the opposite. And I want you to turn your thoughts towards something unpleasant, like the suffering of a child. Now, this should create feelings of sadness. Now, if you notice, in both scenarios, your underlying contentment can basically remain unchanged. In this way, contentment can become our default mindset. We can be content and still experience happiness or suffering within that contentment. In other words, a mind that is rooted in contentment can remain stable and positive despite the arising of difficulties, a happiness that can be cultivated into a nearly constant state of mind, a truly stable happiness. What do you think of that idea? What do you think about happiness as contentment? Miss Wangmo?
I totally agree that you can cultivate that as a default mindset. And once you do start cultivating, you'll really notice it when you deal with frustrating or negative things that come up. Your reaction to it is so less volatile than when you don't have that contentment as a default mindset.
Yeah, it really stabilizes your life. And it also stabilizes your own inner happiness, your peace of mind, right? You get to step off the roller coaster a little bit. Normally, we're just thrown around by stimuli. And I often talk about when people ask me what the benefits of meditation are, and I often say that for me, it's stability, mental and emotional stability. For me, most days, unless I drop something on my foot or something goes awry, most days I feel the same from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, relatively the same. I have little ups and downs, like little pleasant happinesses when I see friends on Zoom but generally I have this stability, this contentment, and it stays with me through the day. It's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary thing. Miss Rula?
Yes, I do also agree that this is real happiness. Contentment to me is real happiness, but I think it's very difficult to attain.
Well, you do it in stages, right?
Yeah.
It's incremental. So I'm going to teach you this week on how to do it, and
Okay.
I'm going to get back to you at the end of the week. So
Okay.
the idea is that it's not all or nothing, right? Think about it as the percentages. If I could promise you 2% more contentment, will you take it
Yeah.
instead of nothing? Well, maybe we could shoot for 4% by the end of the week or 6%.
Okay.
At higher levels, uh, meditation and Buddhist practice go far beyond contentment. This is just one of the and with the same experiences. Thank you,
Okay.
Rula. David, did you want to share?
Um, I kind of worked it out. Um, you said earlier that we can embrace suffering. I was puzzled over how the purpose of life is to be happy. If we can also embrace suffering, but I think I can understand it. As the
I
embrace
usually
suffering.
I Yeah, I usually don't use the word embrace when I talk about suffering. Um And so I did say that, huh? I'll go, the idea is we don't reject it. We accept suffering, but Buddhism is not about embracing suffering. Buddhism is about transcending suffering. I'll look at my notes and I'll correct that if I did, but I tend not to use that word. That's a favorite term for bachelor. Stephen Batchelor likes to use the word embracing happiness and suffering. But I think the Buddha didn't teach that. The Buddha taught transcending suffering, embracing happiness and virtue. Francisco?
Yes, I can imagine how contentment feels when you're experiencing like a mild sadness. But what does it look like with a meaningful sadness, like someone you love being very sick or the death of a loved one?
So your experience of somebody being very sick, I wouldn't call meaningful sadness. That's sadness. Meaningful sadness is you have a friend who lost someone and you take the time to sit with them and be with them and support them and empathize with them. That's an important sadness. That's a sadness you wouldn't want to try to shake off, right? Sitting down with them, you wouldn't try to shake that off and say, "Oh, I'm going to be content and happy." It's like, no, this is the proper time to be to express this meaningful sadness in order to empathize and feel with somebody else. So sadness isn't something that we're trying to abandon. It's an important it's an important quality that we use in life. Suffering is a different quality. Oh, Dharma, please.
Yeah, this is kind of related to what Francisco asked. Like when we're going through it, like when we're going through devastating news, like your mother died or you lost your spouse or something to that effect, how does one balance and keep a hold of that contentment in order to deal with, that type of trauma?
In many cases, you might not be able to. Now, stronger practitioners who have cultivated it and it becomes part of the default mindset, it doesn't necessarily go away. We just experience things through it. And we always return back to it. But we're not into false positivity. We're not into convincing ourselves to be happy all the time. Absolutely not. There's going to be situations it's impossible to be happy in. You see some poor person really afflicted by anything, like a homeless person. I can't be happy looking at, well, let's say a really sick, really a badly off homeless person. I can't be happy when I see that. But the idea is I experience that, help if I can, support if I can. But, after a few minutes when I pass, I can come back to my default mindset of contentment because that sadness I don't believe is going to benefit me long term. So we use wisdom, but there's so many situations that it's absolutely impossible to be content or happy in the face of violence, watching violence happen. Impossible. So we're just talking about doing the best we can where we can. Miss Wamo?
Yeah, in relation to that, I was just sitting here thinking, one of the things that really helps me are focusing on some of the things we're learning in our Buddhist practice, like impermanence. When people die, when you really focus on that and realize that, it helps take that edge off, or emptiness. Like all these practices that we're using, I think they really help us to
And we're going to be
maintain it.
teaching them, right?
Yeah.
In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be teaching all these amazing practices for dealing with exactly what everyone's talking about. Yeah. But I thought that this program would be a bit more fun if I started off with the more positive lessons. The Buddha started with suffering. Okay, everybody, life's suffering. Here's why. And I thought, oh, for a modern audience, that might not be good for attendance. So I thought, oh yeah, let's start with virtue and happiness, and then so we cover everything. Don't worry, everybody. Tarshan?
Yes. I one thing coming up for me is the idea of the importance of not holding on to happiness. So like when we find ourselves in our suffering, say it's a loss of a loved one, and you've kind of already mentioned this, but like this idea of like, well, I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be like chasing after happiness. But that clinging, that grasping for happiness is
Is
itself
exactly
suffering.
what the Buddha said was the cause of all of our suffering. Yeah, that is
Exactly.
no place in Buddhism.
Yes. And as opposed to, I think for me and like my line of work where I'm like around suffering and people in suffering, I notice like the somatic experience of like, I will sometimes feel myself like creating, like there's tension. There's like tension in usually in like my chest. And the way that I see that is like I'm closing myself off to suffering, right? I'm like trying to protect myself from someone else's pain. And that instead of doing that, I found that if I can let go and instead open up and be more vulnerable, that I can like, you know, be
That's right.
in conversation, be in someone's pain with them, you know,
And
and
that's
that there's
exactly what
tremendous.
we're going to teach in this program. In a few lessons, we talk about the two ways we deal with all these afflictions and challenges in life is through understanding and acceptance. So
Mhm.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Tarchin. We're just getting into it. So thank you. Hey, what do you say I move on here? Oh, you guys are so smart. Okay, so through diligent practice, rooted in goodness and virtue, we can increase our contentment to levels of bliss and joy. Generally, this is done through Buddhist practices like meditation, mindfulness, um, and oh, I have a slide to share with everybody. So when we talk about joy, one of my favorite quotes of all time by James Baraz, as one of the seven factors of enlightenment, joy is not only a fruit of awakening, but it's also a prerequisite. Isn't that powerful? As one of the seven factors of enlightenment, joy is not only a fruit of awakening, it's also a prerequisite. We use joy to create more joy. And we're going to tell you how to do that. But they are talking here at a bit of a higher level, and they're talking about a joy that's a certain kind of joy that's found in Buddhism. So this type of joy arises from inner feelings of extreme well-being and satisfaction. We're not talking about the joy of a birthday party. We're talking about the joy that arises from practice. In Buddhism, joy, like goodness, is asserted as an aspect of our true nature. In fact, some of the highest levels of spiritual accomplishment are described as degrees of increasing levels of joy. So in Theravada Buddhism, they call them the four joys: joy, supreme joy, special joy, and innate joy. I didn't name them, that's what they're called. So joy arises from our own well being, but can also arise from rejoicing in the good fortune and well being of others. And this is a fascinating part of Buddhism. And they call this appreciative or sympathetic joy. Isn't that pretty? Appreciative joy. That's what my school called it. Uh, and it's the idea that rejoicing in the joy of others when you see oh, I don't know, your kids playing football and they get a goal, and how and you see how happy they are, and it just fills you with joy, doesn't it? This is a beautiful, beautiful, virtuous joy, but you can become more aware of it and kind of engage in it and embody it more, and it does a lot to work with our afflictions too, because like at the workplace, to be authentically appreciative uh, of someone else's accomplishment. Somebody at work gets a promotion, and instead of being competitive, you can really buy into that feeling. You could feel it and that joy. That's an amazing quality to cultivate. And now at peak levels of what they call shining contentment and appreciative joy. I love those terms. Shining contentment. That's another way of saying joy. Shining contentment or appreciative joy lies the experience of unconditional joy and bliss. So uh, here the key word is unconditional. So it's a fascinating topic concept in Buddhism. Unconditional means that which doesn't arise or is not created by causes and conditions. And as we know, just about everything arises from causes and conditions. But when we talk about unconditional joy, what we're saying is there's no direct stimuli that's really causing it, right? Um, it's you're not feeling the joy because someone handed you an ice cream cone. We're talking that when we feel so content and our sense of well-being is so strong, it naturally creates this feeling of joy. Now, this joy is also accessible through meditation. That's where most people feel this level of joy. And it's because of that. When the mind is so stilled and the mind and the body are so attuned, comfortable, stable, this unconditional joy arises, and it is magnificent. It's often, they say, it's the greatest pleasure known by human beings. It's a spectrum. There's great levels. You can have this unconditional joy at a simple level, but then it can go all the way up into ecstasy. And then that kind of ecstasy they call bliss. And so we have unconditional joy and we have unconditional bliss. Bliss is described as experiences of waves of euphoria that radiate and wash over you. I believe I was the one that wrote that. That's how I describe bliss. That's what it feels like to me. And sometimes it pops up out of nowhere. Sometimes I'll be driving in somebody's car, mundane day, nothing going on, and I'll just have this bliss just wash over me for absolutely no reason. And so that's why we call them unconditional. And the thing about them being unconditional, not having causes and conditions, is that they don't need stimuli to arise. And these can be cultivated as well into the default mindset, and you could experience these on a regular basis. I can only imagine the experience of a Buddha. They must exist in a state of this incredible joy and bliss all the time. Probably a feeling that doesn't ever really leave them, although it probably is a spectrum, goes up and down. Hey, what do you guys got any questions about joy and bliss? What do you think about that? You think it's possible? Namdak, please share.
So I had a thought about how, okay, so like stillness is sort of our natural default state, outside of the chaos of habitual thinking and that sort of thing. Would you say that this sort of true happiness or joy or bliss is sort of like our true default that's absent of conditions and afflictions and outside stimuli?
Oh, there's a lot of terms there I'm not sure what to deal with.
Too
True
much?
happiness, true default mindset. Default mindset is kind of like the working mindset. So I don't think there's anything innate or true about that. We do have our true nature, which is actually better defined as our the likely the potential we have for virtue that naturally arises when afflictions are not present. I'll never forget the definition.
Maybe I'll rephrase, but
Oh,
so our true nature, our nature is happy.
I'm guessing that these things that I'm describing are the peak level of our true nature.
Okay.
That's what it is. And remember, the opposite of our true nature is ourselves full of afflictions like we are now, right?
Okay.
So the idea of that true nature or Buddhahood is to be free of any and all afflictions. And so I'm guessing that that state is one of pure joy and bliss and
Makes sense.
happiness. Now, it doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean that they can experience sadness. I'm sure
Hmm.
the Buddha would be very sad if he saw someone suffering.
Hmm.
So we shouldn't look at things as either or.
Hmm.
It's a
Well,
bit
sadness,
complex.
sadness doesn't necessarily imply suffering. You can experience sadness and not necessarily suffer.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you. Wamo?
I think Joe had his hand up first, Tarpa, if you'd like to take
Joe?
his question.
No, it doesn't matter to me. But
Wangmo?
no, I really like. I'm going to be here whether I talk first or second. But I really like the idea of appreciative joy. That was a Buddhist concept that hit me early, and it's so much nicer than being envious or being just jealous or being covetous or whatever. Just having joy for the person where something good is happening. But I caught on to that early. But lately I've been looking a little bit at compassion because I feel like that's an area that I need more work at. And I read something. It said something like when we get to the point where we think your suffering is my suffering, that's where we really know that we are, turning the corner on compassion and really becoming,
Authentic
yeah,
compassion.
compassionate beings. And my question is, so could we look at compassion as in that way, as the inverse of appreciative joy? Well, it's kind of like appreciative compassion, where we share in somebody's suffering, just
I
like we
wouldn't
would
connect the
share in their
two.
joy.
I see the connection, but I wouldn't really connect it to. One's about empathizing with someone's suffering, and the other one is about celebrating their joy. So they're kind of opposites. But all grandparents are familiar with appreciative joy, right? Because when you're a parent, things go good with kids, but your own ego's caught up in it. It's your kid and but when you're a grandparent, you can really take a step back, and it's you're not embarrassed if your kid does something wrong, or because you can just really appreciate it, can't you? For me, I feel it with my students. I can just when my students do, they send me a message about some great experience they just had in their meditation. Boy, it just I get filled up with joy. Thank you, Joe. Wama?
Real quick, Tarpa, I have a note right in my notes from this right in this part you're talking about how it says all of our higher qualities evolve from our sense of suffering. Can you explain that for me?
Oh, I'll have to ponder that one.
Okay.
I think what it's talking about is that our afflictions are often the sources of a lot of our most coveted traits. Without
Mm.
suffering, we wouldn't know compassion.
Okay.
Without, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Without suffering, we wouldn't know maturity, perseverance. So I think that that was more related to afflictions in general. Yvonne asked, I think when most people talk about what they perceive as happiness, it's actually joy. Uh, Sounds cool. The terms are difficult to define in common language because, yeah, joy is often kind of a form of elevated happiness, right? And I think happiness is maybe more mundane. And even in Buddhism, some traditions flip them. They believe that happiness is lower, joy is higher. I believe in a lot of the Abhidharma, they show joy is lower and happiness is higher. So you got me, Yvonne. It's just they're strange to translate. Yeah. Hey, what'd you guys think about all this talk about happiness? You think I'm barking up the right tree? Makes sense to you? Think we got a good grasp on it? I love the Buddhist take on happiness. I think it's just absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I'll go on YouTube and I'll see all those videos. 5 steps to be happy, and this is happy, and people write books on happiness, and it seems like, boy, nobody really gets it. Nobody really gets the point. The Buddha really got it. Okay, with that said, we got a busy day. Why don't we wind things up? So today we talked about how happiness in Buddhism is related to contentment and satisfaction, the happiness of contentment. We also learned that at higher levels of contentment lies joy, which is asserted as an aspect of our true nature. And that is, and I would say, unconditional joy, which is an important term. In tomorrow's class, we'll be further exploring happiness in lesson 4, and we'll dig into cultivating happiness. What's the good of happiness if you're actually not going to experience it? So please, everyone, review lesson 4 from our program text. Until then, continue your practice on virtue, including reciting your daily affirmations. We're going to keep reciting the daily affirmations throughout the whole program. So we're hoping that that's a daily practice for you, as well as cultivating the 10 virtuous acts. That's also something we just continue to do, and keep practicing the 4 gifts. We're going to be switching practices tomorrow, and to give another one a try here. Always remember that I'm a click away for help and support. And please, if you haven't done so, join our WhatsApp group and post any questions, insight, and experiences that you might have. I don't know if you've noticed, but when people post their experiences and their insights, it excites it excites the class, right? So please, go ahead and post your ideas and your thoughts, and it really motivates people. And sometimes something that's appears simple to you, like a simple experience, can really be meaningful to others. So don't be shy. With that said, let's end today's teaching with our altruistic affirmation. May all be healthy, may all be prosperous, may all be well, may all be present, free of past regret and future worry, may all abide in constant appreciation, which is the source of great joy and contentment. May all realize their true nature and the true nature of reality, which is awakening. Thanks everybody for coming. Hey, the day's not over. As many of you know, this is Sakadawa Day, and it's a retreat day for us. In about 40 minutes, we are going to have our vow and vow purification ceremony. Everybody's invited to come. We have 7 people taking vows today. Some are taking refuge, some are taking bodhisattva vows, and some are taking lay ordination. Very, very exciting. Shortly after that, we'll end our retreat with our final loving kindness meditation Sangha chat. So we got lots of fun stuff still coming up. Okay, thanks everybody. Good seeing you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Venerable Tarpa.
You're welcome.
Thank you.